Hey everybody, welcome to our next interview. And today we have the pleasure of hearing from Denise Perkins. Denise Perkins is an accomplished writer whose work has been featured on HR platforms such as the International Foundation of Employee Benefits Plan, Society for Human Resource Management, Employee Benefits News, Employee Benefits Advisor, Benefits Pro, and LinkedIn. She's the author of The Guide to Becoming an Employee Benefits Know-It-All, a highly popular book among readers. And this year, actually on the 14th, correct me, Denise, on the 14th,
Yes.
you got your Employee Benefits Communication Renewed Old Guide New Story, which we're excited for that to come out as well. Denise has over 30 years of experience in employee benefits administration, consulting, and writing. She is a certified employee benefits specialist, CEBS, and Denise holds a master's in public administration and a bachelor's degree in business management from Penn State University. When she's not writing about employee benefits and designing websites, Denise enjoys spending time with her beloved dog, watching tennis matches, and sharing her love for tiny home living. I have to tell you, I saw that and I smiled and I giggled inside because I'm like, oh, yes, tiny homes. So I know we could probably riff forever on tiny homes. But I just love that that's something that you're also passionate about. So
I am. I'm sitting in a 150-year-old tiny home right now.
that's impressive. It's impressive to me that people can do that. So our participants are in for a treat. Denise, for those that are not very familiar or that are new to the concept, could you briefly explain what narrative communication entails and its significance when we're talking about HR employee benefits?
Yes. Narrative communication is simply sharing information through storytelling. And storytelling, as we all know, is the oldest form of communication. It's how we started communicating from the very beginning. And what's old is new again. Everyone is telling stories these days. And business storytelling is also not new. First, it started with the origin story. Little Warren Buffett was a frugal child who loved investing and started his first business at 19. And then it went on to Peter Drucker's mission statements, where Peter Drucker told everyone, you have to have a story. You have to tell people who you are and what you do. And then the marketing component of storytelling came along. Apple and Nike, and they started using what's called archetypes, saying, we're the rebel business, and this is our story. And if you're a rebel, you want to buy our product. And then came the influencers like Kim Kardashian. Say what you will about Kim Kardashian, she's a marketing marvel, and she does that through storytelling. So businesses have always used storytelling. Unfortunately, HR and benefits departments have not. But the great thing about it is that they can use this ancient technique that's new again to get that employee engagement they claim they want, and also to communicate in a way that is authentic, understandable, and retainable.
Hey, I was having flashbacks of my corporate life, and it was benefits enrollment time, and we had to explain benefits, and it was very dry. For a lot of people, it was extremely dry. So I love that you have this idea of let's make it exciting, let's make it attractive to employees and to really tell the story. How have you seen narrative communication, specifically storytelling and analogies, bridge the gap between complex benefit information and an employee understanding?
Yes, great question. What we saw when the Affordable Care Act passed in 2008 is healthcare policy writers started telling real stories for the first time. Instead of just talking about features of new laws, they started telling stories, and they started with their own stories. And one person who did it really well was Sarah Cliff. Sarah started at the Washington Post doing the Wonk blog, where she talked about healthcare policy. Then she moved over to Fox and then the New York Times. And she was always telling her stories about her interactions with the healthcare system. how, oh, I don't know what a deductible is, and I got hit with a deductible, and I don't have $1,000. And it was all of these cautionary stories, but she used them in a way to explain the complex and make it simple, saying, this is my story, and this is how you learn how deductible really works, instead of reading the insurance definition of a deductible. And then there was Matt Levine. He's a finance writer for Bloomberg. He did something that no one in finance was ever able to do, and that was write stories that the masses could understand. Normally, finance articles are for a minority of people, and 98% of us don't understand it. But Matt started talking about 401k plans and other financial products in a way that people understood, because he used analogies. So he knew how to use narrative communication to explain something really complex, but make it simple by talking about something that everyone already knows. It's like, you're familiar with this product. For example, when explaining compound interest, it's like, you know what a snowball running downhill looks like. Well, that's how compound interest works. And those types of analogies, anyone can use those. And HR and benefits departments really need to start using them, because they have been very successful. Sarah was able to go from some obscure blog to the New York Times because she knew how to use stories to talk about complex issues like health insurance.
Thank you. I'm curious, you work with probably quite a few clients. How have you seen that shift? How have you seen that shift for the leaders to engage a little bit differently when it comes to benefits time?
Well, they like the idea of narrative storytelling, but it's difficult because writing is difficult.
Right.
And most of us haven't written anything since college or high school. And even then, when we knew that we had to write an essay, we all panicked because we just didn't know how to start it. So my clients have the same reaction to writing narratives. It's not comfortable for them. And for some of them, it doesn't seem professional. It's like, it's not professional unless you start an article with a statistic. You have to sound complicated to sound smart, and we all want to sound smart. So they like the idea, they just don't want to do it. They don't mind me doing it for them because they love it, and they see how analogies work. They see their employees saying, oh, for the first time, I know how flex credits work because Denise gave me an example of monopoly money. So now I get it.
That's amazing. Yeah, writing is hard. So I may be in their same camp, but they're very lucky to have you. So the current market right now, labor market, it always changes and it fluctuates. But considering the current competitive labor market, how can effective benefits communication through storytelling give a business an edge and attracting and retaining really good top talent?
Another great question. Today, people want authentic interactions. They know when someone is giving them their marketing spiel, and they know when people are focusing on all the positives and none of the negatives. They want to know what the employer has to offer up front. So when an employer is trying to hire someone and they say, in addition to that great base salary, your benefits are an additional 22%. Most people would say, where did that 22% come from? What does it mean to me? It doesn't mean anything. But if employers told a story about how they use their benefits to show how they value their employees, like we added grandparent leave to our policy because one of our employees that we really value came to us and said, I'm their child. And my mother wants to be there. And my mother works here also. She needs a few days off. And someone said, you know what? Let's show we value you. We like that story. We're going to show that we value you by offering a benefit that we never even thought of before. Those are the types of authentic benefits that employees want to see when you hire them. And those are the types of things that will keep them there.
I got goosebumps when you were telling me that story because what a great a great story, but it has such value, and it just show the staff, their employees. And I don't work for the company and I got goosebumps. Imagine how your employees will feel.
Exactly.
What are some common challenges? We briefly touched on it, but what are some of the common challenges that HR departments, leaders face when conveying the nuances of benefits packages, and how can those narratives really help them communicate and address these challenges?
Yes, like you said from the beginning, employee benefits is complex. It's also boring. And it's also not immediate knowledge that you can put into action. You may never use your benefits for years. And then you have to remember what someone told you 3 years ago. So, narrative communication allows you to tell stories, and stories do something different to the brain than facts alone. Facts alone are easily forgotten. And science shows us that they are forgotten. We forget about 70% of what we hear within 20 minutes of hearing it. And in a couple of days, we've forgotten 90% of it. But when you tell someone a story, these chemicals start firing off in the brain. People become emotionally connected to what you're saying. They're interested. And the brain's like, well, I'm going to retain this because this is really getting to me. I feel happy hearing this stuff. So the brain is more likely to retain information told through stories. So if benefit pros want people to remember what they say and understand the differences between plans, they need to tell it in a narrative form. Sure, you need your facts. You need to tell the facts and features of the plan, but you have to weave relevant stories in there. You have to sort of wrap facts around a story. I think of it like pigs in a blanket. It's like, it's the dough and it's the meat. You wrap them up together, and people are more likely to like the meat because the dough made it understandable and rememberable.
Ah, yes, because you're right. A hot dog can be done any other way, but man, I tell you what, you get those pigs in a blanket and they're delicious. I don't care who you are. It doesn't matter what, what your background or what you ate as a kid. Like, everybody loves pigs in a blanket, but it does go back to that. You're surrounding the data, the facts with just something easier for them to understand. And I think what's really great about that too, as I was thinking, is that it helps it's a great skill to continue to develop, right? Like, even if they're doing it during benefits, this skill will just go across all of their other leadership roles and responsibilities. Because once you get good at storytelling, it changes things for you.
It changes everything. And like, you're right. Once you start, you don't want to stop because you see the difference between just telling factual information versus telling stories and factual information. You see the connection.
Yeah, it's great. Technology is changing. People are doing a lot of benefits online and technology and digital platforms. As more organizations move towards that, how do you integrate? How do you do the narrative with the digital platform? What does that look like, and how can businesses leverage both?
Yes, such a timely topic. And you would think that narrative communication and digital communication were opposed, but they're not. And HR and benefits offices are currently doing this. You have Alexa, you have Amy Avatar, and these are all artificial intelligence type tools that are wrapped in narratives. For example, Amy Avatar will take you through your life story by asking you questions about yourself and helping you make benefits decisions. So we already have the narrative and the digital coming together, but Chat GPT has the potential of taking this to a whole new level. And I'm so excited about Chat GPT. I have been testing it out all year long. And I just wrote an article for LinkedIn where I talked about Chat GPT and using it to generate analogies and stories. And so I did a test and I wrote about how that test turned out. Chat GPT is not ready for prime time. Don't take anything it generates and just put it out there as your own, because it's not accurate enough. But what it's really good at is generating ideas. It's good at giving you an idea for an analogy, and then you take it the next step. It's good at giving you an outline of a story, and then you fill in the blanks. So I'm so excited about the digital and the storytelling together. And it's something that people could use right now and is free.
What, going back to those HR managers that hate even and don't have the ideas, this will help bridge people that struggle just to sit down. I love chat GPT. I love it too. And people are like, what is this AI? I'm like, oh, you got to get into it and learn it because it is pretty powerful and the amount of ideas that can be generated from it. But I love that. Thank you for that, because a lot of people are getting nervous about it taking over, but really it's an enhancement. It helps us do what we're doing better and take away some limitations.
Exactly. It is a great ideas generator. That's what I think of it as right now.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you for chat GPT. Nobody else had really brought it up, and I thought somebody's going to bring up AI at some point.
Me first.
Awesome. Trust, building trust is really important, especially when it comes to benefits. You talked about, in a year or two when somebody has to actually use their benefits, how they remember learning and how it's applied is very different. So tell us, benefits can directly impact that trust. So employees' well-being, security, how can utilizing narratives foster trust and assure employees that the organization truly has their best interests at heart?
Yes, love this question also. If I had to put it in an equation, I would say that trust equals understanding. And when people understand their benefits, they're less likely to be shocked when things go wrong. And they're less likely to be annoyed. And trust is built. But when people don't understand their benefits, they fill in the blanks with their assumptions, and things always go wrong. And these are emotional subjects. I mean, we're talking money, we're talking your health, we're talking your finances. So people can go from 0 to 60 very quickly. And every HR or benefits person has had those uncomfortable conversations with employees, but it really is a matter of a lack of understanding. So if people don't understand, the trust is gone. The great thing about the science of storytelling is it's a real science. We're talking about neuroscience, how the nervous system, which the brain is a part of, is receptive to hearing stories and learning from them, because it is in our DNA. It is how we learn. School teachers know this. They've been doing it forever. This is what they do. They tell analogies, they tell stories. Their students know what to expect. They like their teachers, they trust their teachers. But if they're struggling with the subject, that means the teacher is not doing it well. So they no longer trust or like that teacher. Right. And the same thing happens in the workplace. If people can't explain things to you so that you're not harmed, you're not going to trust them. But narrative communication is that antidote to understanding. It's like it's built in. The science is built in. People will listen, they will hear, they will understand, and they will remember what you said. And that's information they can trust.
Denise, I would love to, and I'm going to go a little off some of the questions, but I would love to know, you've been in this business for 30 years. When did you recognize the shift? Like, when did you realize the impact that you could make and kind of shift into what appears or feels typical benefits, and where you just took onto it and you're saying, look, we got to do it differently? When did that happen for you, and what experiences drove that?
I have always been a rebel in HR. And if you read the guide to becoming the employee benefits know-it-all, you know some of my stories. But I have always been that person who likes the feeling of fear. You know, fear means I have something to learn here. So I have always been looking for ways. I would get so many compliments on, oh, you're such a good speaker. You're the best benefits person. And I never felt that way. I always felt like no one understood what I was saying. I could see it in employees' eyes. And then when I started using analogies, I just said, well, that's how I learned. So I'm going to start using some analogies. So when I started using analogies and people were getting it and people were coming to me, it's like, for the first time, I understand. And then I said, I have to learn more about this. It's got to be more I can do because I'm not a benefits manager for myself. It doesn't matter if I understand this. If I can't explain it so that someone else can use it, because that's what we want. We want employees to act independently with their benefits, but we want them to use them effectively. So I was always looking for ways to challenge myself to find that next way of doing something better. So it was always a challenge to myself, but for the benefit, the takeaway was always for the employee. How can I make it easier for them?
I love that.
Kind of a benefits rebel.
I was going to say, I love that you're a rebel because I was just having a conversation with somebody else earlier today about, man, we need more rebels, honestly, in the HR world and leadership that are willing to see what you're seeing and to apply it in different ways that people haven't maybe applied it before. So I love that you're a rebel. That's exciting.
Yes. HR people are, let's face it, they're highly educated. They're probably the most educated people in all professions. I think it's something like 85% of them have a 4-year degree and close to 70 have an advanced degree. So they're smart people who are into continuous education, but they kind of stay in their lane. They only get their education from a few sources. So I'm trying to expand that.
Okay, so and I have a couple more questions, but for anybody that wants, you guys need to get her book. I'm going to say that again because narratives are big, they're changing. So if you're an HR manager out there and you want to be a rebel like Denise, make sure you go get all of her books after this. So leaders, HR leaders, business owners, how can they be trained or guided? I guess guided is the best way, right? Because we get all kinds of training all the time to adopt a narrative approach. What are some of the strategies that you have used in working with organizations that help leaders adopt that communication, ensuring consistency too, right? So there's storytelling can open up so many worlds, but make things inconsistent or feel inconsistent sometimes. What are some tools, some things that you work with business owners and leaders to be able to do that in their organization?
Yes, good question. Business owners understand storytelling. It's been around a long time and they know it. But for some reason, they haven't pushed it down to the rest of the organization. And that has to happen. There's only one company that I know of that does that, and that's Amazon. When Jeff Bezos famously said, no more PowerPoint presentations. All managers had to write a story of whatever they needed to say in these meetings. They had communicated through writing. So they had to write their stories, send them out to everyone so they could read them. No more PowerPoint. So it's the only organization that I know of that pushed it down to everyone. It's like, we want narratives because we want you guys thinking. We don't want you taking the easy way out and putting a few bullets on a screen. But other than that, we know that business owners know storytelling. They haven't pushed it down. I'm not sure why. HR hasn't adopted it, but there are so many certificate courses out there now. Harvard has a business storytelling certificate program. NYU, Columbia, Georgetown, the University of Maryland, they all have these certificate programs that business owners and HR folks who love their seminars and certificates, they can all participate in these things. And HR people can petition their HR organizations, professional organizations like SHRM, to offer these courses, maybe include some in their training programs and their certificate programs. But they can also do self-study like I did. They can read books. I've read tons of books on neuroscience and behavioral economics. I read books on storytelling in the IT department, storytelling in finance, these complex subjects, just like HR can be. So there are a ton of books, blogs, articles, videos, courses out there that HR people can take to learn how to do storytelling.
I love that. it's interesting because you had talked about being very professional and how sometimes the HR managers, I have to start it with statistics to be very professional, but I'm seeing a shift. I actually feel like, to your point, the authenticity is more professional almost than just the statistics anymore. Kind of seeing this shift that if you can be authentic and have a conversation and speak in these narratives, you're going to have people that are going to follow you, that are going to listen to what you have to say. But it's almost as if that's more professional than just giving a whole PowerPoint presentation, because you don't get the results that you could get with your narrative storytelling.
I agree. And that's why we have TED Talks. That is narrative storytelling. That's your example. And they are extremely popular and they always will be. We all want to do our TED Talk, but no one's called us. But that's your example of business storytelling.
Love that. In your experience, how have employees responded to the narrative-driven benefits communications? And do you have any tips for measuring the effectiveness for this type of approach?
That's the thing. There's anecdotal evidence, but it usually comes from employee benefits communications consultants. Guilty, I do that too, but it's anecdotal. So I don't typically give that much weight. We don't have enough people doing employee benefit storytelling to have the empirical data that we need, but we do have gobs of data about narrative communication and how it works. So for now, we have to rely on that. It works. There are tons of studies that show that narrative communication coupled with facts are how people learn complex information. Hopefully we'll get to the point where benefits and HR departments are using this type of communication regularly so that we can have those studies. But in the short term, if an HR department wants to use narrative communication, it can get feedback through surveys, and it'll show up in the non-survey kind of way. You'll get less phone calls. You'll get less angry people. You'll get people talking about their benefits in a more positive way. Check your exit interviews and see what people are saying about their benefits. All of these non-scientific things will show its head when people start understanding their benefits, and narrative communication can move you in that direction. But we have to start doing it.
If I'm a business leader, excuse me, if there's one other than yours, so everybody needs to get Denise's books, but to Denise's books, if there was a book that or a class that you thought would be extremely impactful, that somebody could go get the book and start learning today, is there a book on narrative communication that you think could cross amongst leaders, HR managers, all of that?
Actually, I would propose a different book.
Ooh, okay.
The book that got me started researching narrative communication was a book on listening science by Kate Murphy. She is a journalist, and she wrote a book called You're Not Listening: What You're Missing and Why It's Important. Because listening science is communication science and is learning science. We learn through listening. And people think that listening is this easy, innate skill, but it's not. Your brain hates to listen. It's like, I don't want to listen to you. I want to do all these other things. I'm a giant computer. I can do a million things. Why did I'll give you this much space to listen, and I'll use the rest of it for something else. So when people understand this listening science, and I didn't even know there was a thing called listening science. And she introduced it to me, and she said, it is the stepchild of communication. It's the one that everyone forgets about. First, you have to learn to listen, because when you learn how people listen and you learn how the brain works, you can write communications that meet them where they are. So that would be the book that I would recommend to everyone. Start with learning how to listen and you'll know how other people listen, and then you can write communications that they'll listen to.
Ah, that's great. Thank you for sharing that. Denise, any other words of wisdom or anything else that you would like to talk about with the business leaders, especially where you have this just vast knowledge of benefits and where you've been?
Well, the one thing, not about me, but the one thing I'd like to say to HR and benefit pros, I have such respect for HR and benefit professionals. It is not an easy job, and they are really smart and hardworking people. But sometimes we can be our own worst enemy. We assume we know things, or we assume we have these innate skills, but communication is really not an innate skill. It's a learned one. Not everyone can stand in front of 50,000 people and tell a story like Jesse Jackson, but he told a story. So I think benefit pros, if they could stop looking at the presentation side of their communication and look at what tools do I need to use to meet my communication goals, which are to impart information that people can understand. That was my mailman.
Hello, mailman.
To impart information that people can understand. So this is a time for HR and benefit pros to be a little humble of what they don't know. You know an awful lot, but this you don't know, and you really need to learn it.
Denise, thank you so much. Don't miss out. Don't miss a chance. Denise has free ebook version on Amazon, correct? Of your
Yes.
book. If you, Employee Benefits Communication Renewed, Old Guide, New Story. It's coming out on September 14th. You guys, if you get a chance, grab it. If you don't, I don't know. I'm going to call and ask. Come on now. But you said that there's no discount code. They'll be able to download that on Amazon, correct?
Yes, so it'll be free all day on September 14th.
Okay, Denise, I want to say again, thank you so much. I love that you have this rebel part of you that talks about benefits and all of it with narratives, because I definitely think that can help change what's happening and the interactions that our leaders and our HR are having with our staff, and how it can help them feel more valued. And I love that this narrative approach that you've taken is allowing people to feel more valued and where they're working. And so just thank you again for, one, being willing to come and be with us, two, taking the time to do the research and then apply it, right? Because that takes a lot.
Yes.
Thank you for that. And we will definitely have to jump on and have another conversation about tiny homes, because I'm again impressed with the tiny home scenario. But again, thank you, Denise, so much. We're such a pleasure to have you here, and that you would be willing to take the time out to talk to everybody today. We look forward to just more narratives in the HR world when it comes to that.
Well, thank you so much for having me and getting this topic out there so HR pros and benefit pros can jump on it.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.